Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of experience comes from bad judgment. So,
welcome to 1 Million Cups Chico. Thank you for being here. We've got a great crowd. We have a great presenter, Andrew March, today. So, if you're not familiar with 1 Million Cups, we are a free community event open to the public, supporting entrepreneurs in our community. And 1 Million Cups is actually a franchise event started with the Kaufman Foundation. And there are over 160 cities that do this event every Wednesday morning across the nation. And we're happy to be part of that network. And the idea behind 1 Million Cups is it's a million cups of coffee to support entrepreneurs and to get a business idea to fruition. So we are not Shark Tank. We are a support organization for entrepreneurs. We're happy to have 6-minute pitches from our local entrepreneurs, and then we have 20 minutes of question and answers. Once a month, we get a business talk from one of our successful entrepreneurs in the community or business leaders, and that's what we're doing today, so it's a special event. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Garden Villa Cafe, for this wonderful venue and for the coffee. Yay. Chico Start for their volunteers and their effort, Danny Shorts Consulting for all of the lovely SEO and marketing that we get, Chamber of Commerce, and all of our volunteers, organizers. To make this happen, it is a volunteer event organized by community leaders and people. If you're interested in participating in organizing, please let us know. We'd be happy to get you involved. And next week, invite your friends. If you know of anybody who has a business idea or is trying to start a business or is less than 6 years into their business, we'd love to talk with them and get them to show us what they're working on so we can all support them. So now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. Andrew March.
sweet. All right.
I just a proper introduction. Andrew March has been involved with multiple startup companies. He's been a Chico Start member. He has amazing advice, and he's also a great mentor for our startup community. So I advise you to take advantage of his expertise and listen to all the words he has to say. And he's a dear friend.
Well, this could be Shark Tank because I'm going to get grilled up here, I'm sure. So I'll probably not recite it properly, but at the end of the day, there was this quote that I read a long time ago called, where it said basically, good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of experience comes from bad judgment. So, take it for what it's worth. We'll kind of get into some of that. So Danny reached out to me the other day and said, hey, we need somebody to talk. Would you be interested? And so I was like, absolutely. I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now, kind of getting back to the roots, exploring what I want to do next. So it's kind of an opportune time, and this really aligns with what I've been doing. So, let's jump into it. Little bit of background. Down, testing. Light works. So good lesson in startups. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So a little bit about me, this wild man in front of you. Why should anything I say be taken with a grain of salt? So there's a guy that I follow. My background's in finance, specifically investment banking. I worked with the best FinTech investment bank in the US. So we represented companies in financial technology. That's where I cut my teeth, worked 100 hours a week. Really made some built amazing relationships with some awesome people, got some great experience. And that really led to me getting a pretty diverse amount of experience in every other company thereafter. And so I've been in software sales. I've made a couple investments in companies. I've definitely made a lot of mistakes trying to start companies. But, by and large, I'm a mission-driven person. And, think about what you want out of life and make your work a path to getting it. I've always chosen excitement and adventure over the immediate paycheck. And for me, that's just my personality. I like adventure. I like stimulation. I get bored pretty easily. So I like, working with amazing people, solving interesting problems. And I've been really fortunate to have worked with amazing people. There are a lot of people that I see here that I truly respect and admire, and I feel personally fortunate to have, met all of you, and I love being in Chico for that, among many other reasons. So the approach and the summary is, really basic. I think it's easy to make things extraordinarily complex. It's much harder to make things simple. And so what are you trying to accomplish and why? The first thing, if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, no idea really matters. And that can be applied to career decisions, relationship decisions, et cetera. 2, we'll talk about finding ideas. Where do you go to find them? 3, defining and applying criteria so that you have a framework for evaluating what is the right opportunity, the best opportunity for me now, et cetera. And then, defining and applying the criteria, validating the problem, that's a critical piece, and I'll talk about some trials and tribulations and successes that I have had there or have experienced through other people. Your solution and the idea, how to go about, seeing if your idea has merit, and then some final thoughts. So that's a quick overview. So the first is what are you trying to do and why? A lot of entrepreneurs, they, like myself, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Problem, solution. And what's really critical is, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to start a new business yourself? Are you trying to pitch an idea within a company to improve that business, capitalize on new opportunities? And really, we'll just focus on the framework, which will apply to both. But it's incredibly important to start with the why. If you don't have the why, if you don't have the North Star kind of directing where you're trying to go, you're going to get distracted pretty easily. So finding ideas, I think my approach is relatively simple. It comes from personal experience, or it comes from intense observation of the outside world. Personal experience, as you're going through life, things happen to you, happen for you, and you can take business ideas from those experiences, and if there's some interest around building a business around it, fantastic. Uber was started because a couple of guys were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have a car pick us up and then go where we want to go, and it's not a taxi? Live like ballers, getting these black cars to pick you up. But a lot of other things have evolved out of personal experience. The other is intense observation of the outside world. There are no shortage of problems in this world, and where there's a problem, there's also most likely an opportunity. And so as we go into the observation of the outside world, we'll talk about some of the criteria that I think can be useful in evaluating whether an idea has merit or not in the business sense. So what you want to do influences which criteria you use. If you're trying to build a business, reflecting on your goals and ambitions and what you'd want to do with your life, if you want to build a small business that's entirely within your control and it's got a localized presence, that's phenomenal. That's amazing. But that's going to influence the criteria that you use for evaluating the opportunity. And then on the flip side, say you had intense, deeply rooted motivations to build, some global company of some type. That also is going to influence the criteria that you use. And so it's important from my perspective to have criteria, because if you don't have criteria, you've got no measuring stick. You've got no measuring board. You don't know what's good. You don't know what's bad. And so you could be, at the whim of a lot of other inputs and stimulus and influences that aren't your own. So some criteria and examples are, the market and the market size, the team needs, the relevant and impact of the solution that you're thinking about. The capital requirements, nothing is free, especially in business. If you want to bring people on, they're going to require some type of money to be paid. If not now, at some point in time, everybody requires money to live. And then timing, why now? I worked with a gentleman in the past who had a really, for me, very provocative question, which was very simple to ask, very hard to answer, which is why now? And so when you think about it, it's like, what about the world today would be a catalyst for your business actually succeeding? 20 years ago, Instagram wouldn't have worked for a variety of reasons. The technology wasn't in place. The social environment wasn't really, set up to benefit from this type of thing. But, why now? et cetera. And there's, you can have as many or as few criteria as you want, but ultimately having some criteria is a great starting point. So the other piece is, validating the problem. Like I mentioned before, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and I'm guilty of that. So little background, Keith Cratch was one of the co-founders and CEOs of Ariba Networks. Most people may not know what Ariba is because it's not super flashy and social media centric, but basically Ariba is a B2B procurement platform. It's a marketplace to buy and sell goods for businesses that transacts trillions of dollars in gross merchandise volume every year. They were acquired by SAP a couple years ago for multiple billions of dollars, and he was also the CEO of DocuSign. And when he was getting Ariba started, I pulled this from an interview that he had. So background and context. He assembled an amazing team of 7 people that had technical competence and experience across different parts of the business, from finance, marketing, product. He was the CEO and primary founder, so he was an expert in raising capital. But this is what one gentleman said who is on the engineering side. And I think this speaks volumes. So Keith basically said to his head of engineering, why don't you build the prototype that we can look at? And the guy responded, no, I'm not going to write a single line of code until we go out and talk to customers. So right there, that's some risk mitigation. Let's be smart before we start committing resources and time. So then, a little back and forth, how many people should we talk to? Get a relevant sample size, like 50. Well, what questions should we ask? Well, you're the CEO, figure it out, right? But, the point is validating the problem and the severity of the problem. As human beings, we all have problems, but the severity of the problem is going to influence whether the business idea has some merit. So let's have a very, simple example. Brushing your teeth. Everybody's got to brush your teeth if you want to keep your teeth. It's kind of a pain in the neck, but you got to do it. You got to floss. Well, are you going to go buy like some $400 toothbrush that helps you floss your teeth and brush your teeth better? Probably not. It's probably not going to move the needle compared to what already exists, which is the average toothbrush and floss. So a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this myself, is you think, well, that's a problem, I want to solve it, without truly understanding the people that it's affecting. And you have to ask yourself, does my solution actually move the needle for that person? And in the business environment, for specifically B2B type companies, they'll build products because they see a need, but then oftentimes they won't empathize and deeply understand the customer's needs. And they'll say, well, this is a great solution to a problem. And that may be the case. But the person in control of the purse strings making the decisions may say, hey, that is a solution to a problem that I have, but it doesn't move the needle. It doesn't make me enough money to justify getting involved. It doesn't save me enough cost or expense or headache to get involved. And so the key takeaway is understanding the problem, how impactful it is, and just getting out there and talking with people about it to see, hey, if I built this and it solved your problem, would you be willing and able to pay me? So the solution and the idea, if you can't explain it in one sentence, there may not be a market for it. I had a call with a gentleman the other day, great guy, interesting product. It literally took me 15 minutes to understand what he was working on, and that was influenced in part by me asking a lot of questions because everything he said was just no idea. So what does it do? What kind of solution is it? What's the problem? And does it even solve the problem? Will people adopt it? Will they pay for it? Very simple questions to ask, harder to answer, and doing some research, getting out in the field, talking to people. It's old school, but let's be honest, sometimes tried and true is better than flashy and new. Another example that I share with some folks, and I try to reflect on this often, is the antidote and the syringe. Technology today is extremely powerful, and it's at everybody's fingertips. I mean, the ability to create your own website without knowing any code is at most people's fingertips. The ability to run social media campaigns, plug your budget in, write a couple lines of copy, upload a photo. Like, executing on these things are so easy today because the tools are so powerful, and what we can do is really, fantastic. But people confuse the antidote with the syringe. Let me be very clear about what this example is. You have somebody that needs, some kind of antidote for whatever their illness happens to be. It's in the syringe. The antidote is what they need. The syringe is the delivery mechanism. Said another way, Instagram, what do? The outcome that Instagram provides is a sense of connection with other people through pictures. The delivery mechanism is the application, the mobile application, the ability to upload photos. And so the antidote here is the sensation, the experience, the connectivity, the feeling of connection with other people. It's not the app itself. The app is the delivery mechanism. And far too often do I, hear people talk about, well, my app does this, my website does that. It's not about the website, it's about the outcome. If somebody is going to a website, they're looking to get some type of value, either buy a product, learn more about something. The website, the mobile application is the delivery mechanism for that information or for the solution. And so being very clear about, what the outcome you're trying to deliver is relative to the problem is critical, and then thinking about how you actually deliver it. So I think we're keeping this kind of quick so we can do some Q&A if desired. So some final thoughts is, keep generating ideas. I probably have, 100 to 1 really crappy ideas to every one decent idea. And then it's, in the business sense, don't get emotional about it. The market doesn't care. And I'll give a very real example about this. And then define success. Like, what does success actually look like for you? Does it mean getting into the hands of X number of customers? Does it mean getting an idea from just something in your brain to on paper, from on paper to a prototype, et cetera? So defining success and milestones will help you actually move it forward. And then know your limits and weaknesses and how to manage them. I think that's also critical in understanding ideas. Talk with other people. Contrasting opinions and experience will help you vet your ideas better with, ideally, an unbiased perspective. It's easy to get passionate about problems that you want to solve, but looking at it from somebody else's perspective is always healthy, because if you can find somebody who's going to be, honest with you but polite, and give you straight up honest feedback, they may not be right, but it's a feedback and an opinion to take into consideration, because there may be more of those out there in the market. So going back to the don't get emotional piece, I feel like I've evolved pretty well in this area, where I have no shame in taking these things out back and shooting them. So I got a lot of ideas. I got a nice little burial ground behind my barn for bad ideas. I look at it from a financial perspective, so specifically like how hedge funds operate. So what a hedge fund is, they take people's money, they have an investment thesis, they go deploy or invest that money, and the whole goal is to take X dollars and then grow those dollars based on their theme, their investment hypothesis, et cetera. The same thing can be said with any startup. And really, the reason why I like the hedge fund and investing example is because when you have an idea, hey, I think this stock's going to go up based on X, Y, Z of what I know about it, my intuition, et cetera. When you put the money into that stock, it's going to go up, down, or flat. And there's zero other outcomes that's going to occur. Up, down, flat, simple. And if you make money, great. If you lose money, the market doesn't care. The market has zero regard for your emotional state when it comes to making those investments. For startup businesses, it's a much slower process to realize success and failure, because the reality is you can sell things for a certain period of time, over time, and still get some element of traction, but then the staying power of the business is going to be highly influenced by the relevance of the solution, how impactful it is, if it actually solves the problem, and if it gets better over time. And so don't get emotional about, the idea at the end of the day. I think if you can detach emotionally from it, you'll be in a much better position to act unemotionally and with less bias, and then think about it from a higher level perspective. So that's about it. I'm on LinkedIn. I probably think we're all connected here already. But yeah, so I mean, I guess we could do a Q&A. That's what we've done in the past, right?
I do have a question for you.
All right.
So you've had a lot of experiences. You've gone through a lot of companies. What would you identify as probably your greatest success so far in your very young life?
Yeah. So my success at this point in time is developing personal criteria for getting involved with new businesses and people. So for me, what drives me is meaningful work and meaningful relationships in business, and I'm going to ruthlessly steal that from Ray Dalio, who I'm a big follower of. He's a hedge fund guy. But for me, when I read that, it struck a chord with me because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're all working really hard on doing interesting and important things, and you know, time is valuable. And so, if you're working on something, figure out what really gets your pants on fire. And if that's working with awesome people, you know, and solving interesting problems, I'd say that's my greatest success.
So, is there any like one or two specific habits that you've implemented that have kind of contributed to just the way that you think, you know, being able to kind of make things happen over time?
Yeah. So for me personally, you know, and I say for me personally quite often because I've learned that being prescriptive is not really super effective. People don't like being told what to do. So for me, what's worked is just a radical open mind in terms of, hey, I could be freaking wrong about a lot of stuff, and I'm open to being wrong. I definitely have opinions, strong opinions, but if given information that will help me readjust and recalibrate, I'm open to that. So that's been one specific piece that I've developed over time. The other that I've developed is, you know, discipline and focus. If you don't know where you want to go, all of these other things don't really matter. And so for me, I've been very career focused, looking at doing interesting work with awesome people. And so those are two specific things. One is, you know, just radical open-mindedness, being open to being wrong and learning from it. And then two is being focused, personally, but then also professionally, is focusing on the right goals. So going like one level deeper, you know, I think, you know, if we were to reflect on this intellectually, like 99% of the stuff that's done on a day-to-day basis probably doesn't matter. There are a few very large stones that drive a majority of the outcomes and the value being created. And it's taking a step back to get perspective, to be ruthlessly efficient at looking at what are those big stones in the business or in life, and then focusing on moving those forward. And then combining the open-mindedness to say, okay, here's how I think I can move these initiatives, thoughts, ideas forward. Could I be wrong? I think I'm right, but how do I know I'm right? How do I get the perspective so that I can actually be effective at moving it forward?
Follow up to that, is there any like daily practices that you apply to help you be focused and disciplined?
Waking up at 4:30 in the morning, going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, writing in a daily gratitude journal, watching what I eat, being ruthlessly disciplined about my habits, my thoughts, my behaviors, and keeping track of this stuff. For me, I'm a wild guy, like I said. I am definitely, you know, ADD sometimes, and, you know, going through a lot of experiences, developing self-awareness to know, hey, my weakness is not being super organized. You know, I have a lot of ideas and I can think about things very quickly, and, you know, I'm very decisive. But when it comes to developing like a methodical process for getting crap done, I need structure. So, and I've learned from other people who have been really experts at developing structure for themselves, and I've adopted those practices. Am I perfect? Absolutely freaking not. I'll never be perfect, and I can always improve, but those are some of the things that have helped me, is just, and embracing things that suck. You know, I think, you know, hard things can kind of shape, you know, who you are, and if you look at it with the right mindset, you could get better and help other people get better. So just doing hard stuff.
So I'm similar to you in a lot of ways, that I get distracted easily. I like adventure. I like being stimulated. And I'm getting to a point where if I rely on the frequency of my inspiration to write or to create content, it's not fast enough anymore. So I know that you kind of answered a lot of what I'm asking just now, the discipline. What are some ways, like when you're just getting started, trying to discipline yourself to be more focused, that you can kind of like snap into that mindset? Do you have any tricks or tips to get started? I found myself, I know I need to focus on what I'm trying to build, and I need to write more often than when I'm inspired to. But like you, I'm just like, well, I want to do this, I want to do this, it's more exciting.
Yeah.
I know I'm neglecting something that I need to focus on.
Yep. So perspective, so this is a very nuanced question, so I'll kind of triage it as quickly and efficiently as I can. So let's combine like, discipline with awareness, with 99% of things don't really matter, is think about it from a very simple perspective. It's easy to make things complex, hard to make things simple. What's the one thing you could do today that's gonna move the ball forward? If you do that 365 days a year, that's a lot of stuff that you're doing that's moving the ball forward, right? So instead of trying to do 20 different things every day, what's the one thing? Hey, I gotta write a piece of content, I'm not pumped up about it, but F it, I'm gonna do it because I have to do it. The other piece is like tip and trick in terms of like getting motivated. I think motivation, it ebbs and flows, right? Hey, the day is nice today. We're having a great conversation among awesome people. It's easy to get inspired. What's really hard is when the day is crappy outside, you didn't get enough sleep, you feel funky. How do you stay motivated when you feel like crap, right? So I have a couple of tips and tricks where I look at pictures, I read something that I've read in the past, or I watch a video that puts me in a good mental place where I kind of draw on that emotion that I got from that good, stimulus. So that helps me in terms of, like tips and tricks. The other thing that I think about is, what is the alternative? This has to get done. And if you think about it like this has to get done and this has to get done now, and making it very singular, one thing at a time, it's easier to block and tackle those things out. So that'd be my advice.
There's a lot to that part. We look for motivation to create discipline, and it's actually the other way around. We're disciplined to do it whether we want to do it or not, and the motivation comes because we did it. We did the act. We started. We have this flip. I need to be motivated. It's like we're disciplined. But we actually need to be disciplined, which creates the motivation.
100%. Yep. Yep.
What's first? I'm going to change the conversation a little bit from a community city perspective. What are the challenges and the advantages of being an entrepreneur here in Chico that you see?
So challenges being an entrepreneur in Chico.
Yeah, starting a startup here.
Well, so let's talk about pros and cons. So
totally.
Pros, Chico I think has a unique environment where, when I say unique, I was asked this question the other day where it's like, what is your superpower? Well, I'm not the smartest person ever. I don't have the deepest specialization in a particular area, but my superpower is the ability to combine various skills, attributes, and experiences to create a unique formulation of the multiple component parts. So I think that's where Chico is too. Chico has a bunch of these like independent component parts that if evaluated alone would not make Chico stand out in any respectable way. But when combined with each other, for example, the strength of the community, which I think has been revealed in the wake of the campfire and a couple of other disasters, I think the community, the tightness of the community, the quality of the people, it's very entrepreneurial up here in the sense that people are very, self-sufficient. I think that gives a dogged determination, behind a lot of people. So there's some staying power. So I think you look at some of those attributes and combine them with each other, and you have this amazing community that's very supportive. It's very supportive. It's encouraging because there are other examples of success, across the playing field. Regardless of industry or company size, there are a lot of examples of success to draw on here. So I think those are some of the pros. I think some of the cons, one, it's size, right? 100,000 people, it's just a math equation, right? There are only so many people that you could hire at your company, and that's just a physical constraint. and I'll say this as a pro and a con at the same exact time, you got to take it with a grain of salt, is, for all of the benefits Chico offers in terms of its lifestyle, accessibility, the outdoors and its accessibility, the friendliness of the culture, the laid back lifestyle, those are all great things and I think are enriching for life. They need to be well balanced with, I'll just say this, aggressive urgency when trying to build a business. And so if you're trying to get people that are happier kind of chilling out on a beach rather than driving hard towards some goals, that's got to be managed. And, look at big metro areas. People call it the rat race. And there's an element of the rat race there, sure. But you got to look at what is inspirational about that too. People are working very freaking hard to accomplish things. Now, whether they're pursuing are the right goals for them, that's a whole nother discussion. But, just that relentless work ethic to get things done, to achieve goals, I think is something that Chico should consider in terms of what kind of culture are we trying to build here. And so it's a pro and a con. I think another con is its geographic location, which is a blessing and a curse. These are all blessings and curses at the same time. We're a little bit far removed. Transportation's a little bit hard. So when you're trying to convince, investors to come to Chico, it's a little bit of a hard sell, because if I'm an investor, why am I going to come 3 hours north of SF to meet with one company? It's not a good utilization of my time. And it affects commerce too, in and out transportation. There's definitely some logistical challenges there. But I would say by and large, those things should not impede or inhibit somebody from getting a business started. Because if those are the barriers to getting a company going and being successful, those are relatively low bars to jump over. And if you can't get over those low bars, the much more aggressive high bars, you just stand no chance. And so that's just my perspective and philosophy on it. So, a lot of people have different perspectives on it. So that's long-winded answer around Chico as a startup environment.
So on your trek for being an entrepreneur, do you think it's going to stop, and when do you think you hit success? What is successful for you?
So a lot of things.
So when do you know when to stop, or when do you know?
So I look at, and I've reflected on this pretty deeply, is if I don't enjoy the journey, everything that comes from that journey doesn't matter. So success, whether it's monetary success or a title change or being a part of a prestigious company, none of that stuff matters if I'm not enjoying the process. So for me, success is, would I be happy if I was doing something, would I be happy working at a company that was failing versus being unhappy at a successful company? And happiness is relative and it's different for each and every person. I've been very conscious about the type of life that I've architected for myself. I'm 34, I'm single, I've got no obligations, no real liabilities. And so I have relative to the average person, I have an insane risk tolerance. If you don't believe that, you talk to my parents and they'll give you a freaking earful. When am I gonna get a 9-to-5 job? And when are you gonna get a job, settle down, buy a house, blah, 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 blah. So those things right now, they're in my mind, but they're not, the focal point. So when do you stop? It never stops. And maybe that's just a genetic malfunction I have. But I look at the process and the journey, and if I am meeting new people, working on interesting things, if I can continue to do that forever until I pass away, that would be awesome. So I don't think there's a monetary limit where it's I'm going to stop because I made this amount of money. I think my priorities will change and readjust. What would I want to do at that point? Give back, do other things. But I don't know if, I guess if the question were to be reframed and focused on self-improvement, I don't ever want to stop improving as an individual. And so, when that becomes the focus, I look at all of these things personally and professionally as part of that whole journey. So long-winded answer, short summary is I don't think it ever stops, but yeah.
So a lot of the startups that come through Chico Start don't understand or don't value the need of thinking about the concept of team when they're
Right.
building a business.
Right.
So I noticed you mark that out in your slides. Can you talk a little bit more about
For sure.
your perception on that?
So my perspective on this matter is multiple. Nothing great is going to be accomplished by a single person. I mean, it's just, unless you're a scientist somewhere who creates some like new calculation that everybody else uses, it's kind of a lonely existence doing that. But in building a business, I mean, it's not possible to do it alone. There's no precedent for a single person building a company that has had widespread impact. And so if you look at that from like an intellectually honest perspective, you really start thinking about, well, what kind of people do I need on the team? Both in terms of talents and skills and expertise, but then in terms of, the relationships, do they gel with me? Do they not gel with me? So, team needs, once you find the idea, I think the next thing is finding the people. And here's a great litmus test for how legit the idea is and your thought process around it is, if you can't convince the top 5 or 10 people you'd want to work for you, that should be some indicator that you've got more work to do. So the team is absolutely critical. I mean, that's really...
What would be your advice? So a lot of times, there's somebody that has the idea, they've sold it to their friends and family, so they feel like they're surrounded by a group of people who support their belief.
Yep.
And then the next step is they start seeking advice in the community, sometimes through Chico Start or what, and they expect to get assistance for certain things, but they're not getting buy-in for their business. So what would be your advice for people seeking a team and how to go about finding those people that can rally behind them that aren't their friends and family?
So this is where I think having a high degree of emotional intelligence is really important, because here is a very real component to building an amazing effing team. You have to know what other people want and what motivates them. Not everybody wants to be that person on ground floor zero, grinding it out. That doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean they don't have the skills and experience that you want or need. It just means at that point in time in life, they're in a position that is not well suited for where you're at. They may be a great employee at milestone XYZ when your company is larger. So having a deep understanding and appreciation for where other people are coming from is critical to like recruiting people to get that buy-in. Because you could be speaking French in a Spanish-speaking country. You're talking to somebody you perceive to be the right fit, and it's like miscommunication. Hey, you're not talking my language. I'm not at your level, and I'm not like above or below level. It's just like, I don't want to be a startup employee. Doesn't make sense for my lifestyle. And so like knowing that and understanding it and then thinking about and visualizing, hey, how do I architect the organization around the idea? What kind of people do I need? What are the personality characteristics, motivations, and at what time? Their risk tolerance, And so like, I think that's critical to being a persuasive salesperson, is deeply understanding the person's needs, because at the end of the day, it's all sales, right? You're selling somebody on your vision for coming into your company the same way you're selling a prospective customer on the viability and impact of your solution. If you can't understand them and relate and empathize, foreign languages, So that would be like a piece around, how do you get the right people? And, especially like younger entrepreneurs, there's just a very real constraint that they have to overcome. Is it overcomable? Yes, but here is a constraint. They haven't lived as long as other people who are older. And so as you get older, you develop a broader and deeper network of relationships that allow you to tap into different people and different talents that can be contextually relevant at different points in time in the business's life cycle. When you're 22 coming out of college, all you know is, hey, you got some friends that are in the dorms with you, going to party, going to class with you. They have similar experiences. So you've got a relatively shallow network that you can draw from. And it takes, a lot of work to kind of,
She said something really interesting how she opened that question, but it connects back to the thought that you had before about not getting too married to your ideas. Because I see a lot of young startups who friends and family say, yeah, this is a great idea, but it's a terrible idea.
Right.
Right? And then you just take it out back and shoot it in the head, and that's why they can't get people to buy into it outside of that group, because they've told them all their whole life they were a great singer, and they go on American Idol and look like a fool.
Right. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the team needs is quite honestly the biggest challenge. I mean, right now, I could definitely use some optical engineering expertise in my company. So where do I find that in Chico? And I'm not looking for entry level, right? We're looking for modern, middle kind of folk where that guy's getting paid $250 in the Bay Area. What's going to entice him to come around here? Okay, let's just go the other way around. Let's try to find that person in Chico. Because that person could be hungry enough to be at ground zero and, walk the talk, talk and walk. So
And
it's one of those challenges.
And I think one piece too is like creating a great marriage in that sense. What I've experienced is, radical transparency. Here's what we need here, and it takes you got to be like a strong person to go deep and actually do this. But it's like, here's what we're great at. Here's where we are. Here are the risks involved. Putting it out on the table, full open kimono, and allowing somebody else to have a double opt-in. Because at some point in time, if you withhold information, people are freaking smart and they're going to figure it out. And if they figure out something that was withheld from the get, they're going to jump ship. They're going to become less engaged as an employee or a partner. And so when you can, lay it out on the line and create that mutual alignment and double opt-in, part of it is what kind of goals are you trying to accomplish? And again, being, married to your idea or concept, are you married to the person being physically in the same location as you or not? And does that have an influence on the outcome being delivered or not? And so it's like having an open mind in terms of what matters most. Again, 99% of the things don't matter. If your goal is growing your business, advancing your idea a certain, direction over a certain period of time, what's going to get you there? So being flexible in terms of people. We're timed out. My tongue's getting cut off.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It was awesome. It's always great to hear from you. Thanks everybody for coming to 1 Million Cups Chico. We'll see you next week at 9 a.m. Please bring a friend. If you know of anybody who has an idea or would like to share their business, we would love to hear from them and give them support. Thanks to our sponsors, Garden Hill Cafe, Chico Start, Chamber of Commerce, Community Sports Consulting, and Ken for doing the video and audio, but I don't know what to call you as a sponsor. Ken is just awesome and the camera videos. So, anyway, thank you.